While the Apollo moon landing of 1969 was a much celebrated event at the time, in the years since it has been mired in controversy around the world. The controversy stems from the unproven but yet persistent conspiracy theories regarding the validity of the video that NASA released of the event. Today I would like to talk to you about where these conspiracy theories got their start, how far and why they have spread, and how the American government has given new life to the conspiracy theories. The idea that the moon landings were a hoax was first given wide attention in Bill Kaysing's book, We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 Billion Swindle, which was written in 1974. Kaysing focused his doubt on the technical aspects of the mission, as well as the footage and the celluloid film that was used. He basically stated that the missions were technically impossible for NASA, and rather admit the inability to meet John F. Kennedy's challenge to NASA to land a man on the moon safely and bring him home by the end of the decade, they decided to fake the moon landings by filming them either on a soundstage in Hollywood or in the Nevada desert. Kaysing also claims that the $30 billion in funding of the Apollo project was adequate to pay off anyone and everyone that had knowledge regarding the hoax. It's important to note that no publisher was willing to take a chance on Kaysing's book, and that forced him to publish it himself. The fame he received, though, thrust him into the spotlight of the conspiracy theory movement, which was in its infancy. The timing of the book's publication is also important. In the 11 years prior, there were a great number of events that were legitimate cause for alarm and skepticism in the United States. There were the assassinations of John F. Kennedy in 1963, his brother Robert and Martin Luther King in 1968, Watergate in 1972, secret recordings of popular records if you played them backwards, and various corporate scandals, and as well as the ever-present mob. Needless to say, America was an understandably skeptical nation in 1974. All of these scandals, which spawned many conspiracy theories, provided a fertile ground for the theory that the Apollo moon landings were simply another part of a greater plot to trick the everyday American. Kaysing's message fell on ears that were at least willing to listen. Some say that the Apollo hoax theory was given an additional boost by the 1978 film Capricorn 1, which depicted a faked landing on Mars using a similar craft to the Apollo landers. By that time, though, the theories were well-established folklore. It is also worth noting that the now famous Roswell incident in 1947 was largely forgotten by the public until 1978, when Jesse Marcel interviewed Stanton T. Friedman for a paper about UFOs. It's noteworthy because 31 years had passed before the conspiracy theories regarding Roswell took hold, despite a wealth of information that could raise questions being readily available. The point is, people were skeptical for various reasons in the late 60s and early 70s, and to that end, the legitimacy of the Apollo program and its missions was a victim of the world around it. Moving on. Despite the fact that the world has changed and another generation has come of age since the Apollo missions, the conspiracy theories persist. But interestingly, there are different levels of acceptance of the theories in different countries. A 1999 Gallup poll stated that about 6% of Americans think the Apollo missions were faked, but a recent poll by a leading newspaper here in Stockholm, Sweden, showed 40% of Swedes believe the conspiracy theories. Furthermore, the Cuban school system teaches the hoax theories as fact even to this day, despite the fact that the Soviet Union never disputed the moon landings. Every culture has its own propensity to believe or doubt depending on its environment. With each retelling of the story, it gains more believers. This was demonstrated in February 2001 in the United States when Fox broadcast a special report titled Conspiracy Theory, Did We Land on the Moon? After the show aired, another poll was taken which stated that 20% of Americans doubted the moon landings were true. One thing worth mentioning is that many experts have debunked all of the major conspiracy theories. For many, proof that they were wrong yields a further conspiracy theory about covering up the facts. Here in Europe, this summer, I've had to listen to many people lecture me on how the moon landings were faked by a United States desperate to win the space race. To mark the anniversary of the Apollo landings, there were many television documentaries that repeated the various ideas of the conspiracy theorists. There were no tellings of the expert debunkings of the conspiracy theories. The documentaries were just simply throwing out the idea in order to let the viewers decide. After asking skeptical people here why they thought the way they did, I realized that they were simply choosing to believe that the America which has looked increasingly imperialistic in the last decade was trying to trick them. They stated that they felt that America had tricked the world concerning weapons in Iraq and various terror threats, so why wouldn't they have faked the moon landings? But beyond that, they expressed that they felt under threat and suspicion when visiting the United States by having to give fingerprints, photos, and in some cases even bank information before they were allowed to enter the country. None of which is necessary for Americans traveling anywhere in Europe, and none of this was required of tourists before September 11th. The fact of the matter is, it is nearly impossible that thousands of people in the Apollo missions in America and people who tracked the missions in the Soviet Union would all choose to keep such a secret, no matter how much they were paid. This is the first requirement for the existence of a grand plot to trick the world. Besides, there would have been obvious political gains for the Soviet Union to debunk the moon landings. Also, thousands of people witnessed the launch of the rockets firsthand. There were many countries with radar abilities that would have noticed the Apollo rocket orbiting the Earth for 6 days rather than visiting the moon. It's impossible that NASA could have anticipated every single person they needed to pay off in advance of the mission. Beyond that, people are greedy. Many would have taken the money from NASA and later sold their story to the local newspaper or a magazine. As of today, no one has ever come forward with such a story anywhere. But what was interesting in my conversations with the people is that present events are affecting the way that people see past events. If the stories of the moon landings being faked were falling on deaf ears, then they would simply die out. I think that people have felt deceived and slighted by America's gruff handling of foreign affairs, visitors, and even civil liberties of its own citizens, all in the name of the war on terror. The war has created an environment where not only our reputation has been tarnished on the diplomatic stage, but on the popular and historical stages as well. Just like in the 60s and the 70s, the environment now is ripe for suspicion both inside our borders and beyond our shores. The best way to protect legitimate accomplishments, such as the moon landing, from wild conspiracy theories is for our government to exercise vigilance, prudence, temperance, and transparency as a foundation for its operations. Thanks.